Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jason Fine, Superintendent of Bexley City Schools. Before we get started, a couple thank yous. Huge thank you to our library, the public library. They do a phenomenal job. This space is perfect. They always look for ways to support the schools, so we really appreciate our friends at the library. And we want to thank you. We didn't know the rain was coming at the time that it came, and we appreciate that you fought through it. We also had a couple folks comment that the outbound call, Carol, was a great reminder. Sometimes we get a little heat for using that as a tool, but we think this is important. We think it matters. So we appreciate you giving us space and giving us time to have these important conversations. I want to talk about, well, before we begin, we've got a full agenda, and we're going to dig in. Last night we had a great meeting. We probably presented for close to an hour. And then we had 30 minutes to walk around, and you're going to see some of the things that we talk about through our presentation. We're going to ask that we hold questions. We will have plenty of time at the end. Hopefully we answer those questions. And at the end, we will all be here in the space as we do our gallery walk. You can have access to some of the questions if you don't get answered. We'll also have a form at the end where you can provide feedback and questions based off of the things and items that you're going to hear. But I want to thank the folks that you're going to hear from tonight. We've got Kyle Smith, our treasurer, is going to speak with us a little bit about budget items. We're going to have Dr. Harley Williams, our Director of Operations and Facilities, will connect with us. I want to thank our Board of Education. We're really lucky in Bexley to have a Board of Education that gets it and that fights and supports and advocates for our students and our staff. Patrick King, board members in the back. We had several members here last evening. Really appreciate our Board of Education. Also want to thank our amazing school principals. School's in session. But here they are, making sure that we have access to some great knowledge and expertise, and we appreciate our principals. They are the reason that we have had the ability to identify a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. They have met with our architectural team for many hours, and they do that while making sure that our students are taken care of each day. So Janine Hetzler at Cassingham, Jason Cottle, our secondary principal, Naisha Clayton at Montrose will probably be in the space, and Miss Nicewander from Maryland. She's got some issues that she's taking care of this morning at the building level, and she might sneak in at some point. But we really appreciate that team. We call them the Dream Team. I want to talk about our engagement schedule, where we are in this moment, where we've been. Exciting things. I cannot believe we're at community engagement session number 4. It feels like we've just started this process. We are actually a year in. A year ago, we our Board of Education approved our strategic plan. We just had our building team meetings, number 3, last week. We are at community engagement session number 4. You see that our building team meetings 4 and 5 will take place in July and August. That one in July will be virtual, as we've promised. We're looking at maybe making the next one, the 5th meeting, in person. We'll keep everyone posted. And then I want to make sure that you see the change on the community engagement session number 6. That was originally scheduled a week earlier. We've had a scheduling conflict, so we've moved that back. That's why it's highlighted in red. We'll continue to promote that in our communications with Carol Taylor, our public information officer. Also, if you subscribe to our facilities calendar, which is a great place to know exactly what's happening with our several meetings that we have updated that to the new date of the 19th and 20th. I want to comment today. We're going to throw a lot of, I hope, great information at you. But I want to make sure that we understand. If you were a part of our building team meetings, raise your hand if you're a part of our building teams. So we've got several of you in the space. Really appreciate that work. Love that you're in that space, but continuing to dig into this space because that's really helpful to have that connection. If you were on the building team meetings, you heard multiple times where we talked about building team meeting 3 and community engagement session number 4, which is today. We're not going to really dig into the actual numbers of the cost of the options you're going to see. And I likened that to when you shop for a home. So I moved to Bexley a year and a half ago, and we started that process by meeting with a realtor. And when we met with the realtor, we talked as a family what our dynamics were, how many family members we have, how many what type of home we're looking for, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, the size of yard, the locations, those sorts of things. We talked about a bigger budget at that point. We did not start talking about exact numbers to the homes that we were going to identify, but we talked about a larger budget. You'll hear that today. Our treasurer, Kyle Smith, is going to talk to us a little bit about the bigger picture of a budget, but you won't see dollars to the options that you talk about. You'll see broad, but we want to make sure that folks understand that that's the process. Now, when we get to building teams 4 and 5 and community engagement session number 5, that's where those dollars that mean more towards the options come to life. That doesn't mean that we're not always processing our budget. That is always at the front of mind. So I want to make sure that we have clarity there. But don't forget, community engagement number 6 is a shift. The yellow dot, that's where we are today. That is the very early stages of the options phase. We're in phase 2 of this 3-phase process. We finished our assessment phase, I believe in April. We had a Board of Education presentation by our incredible architectural team. They provided a final assessment report. You can find that on our website. You can find everything you need on our website. We hope you continue to access that. But right now, we've moved into our options phase. Why that dot is important is it shows you that we're in the early phases. We're at the very beginning of the options phases. What you see tonight may look different as we get into building team meetings 4 and 5 and beyond, community engagement session number 5. So this is the beginning. Lots of iterations, lots of tweaks, lots of conversations around where we're headed and the options based off of feedback that we receive from our folks that are participating in these types of conversations. So I want to make sure that we see access to that. How this works is all that information that we've hopefully identified that you can access on the website. All of that information, your feedback today, our feedback from our building team meetings, all of that information is gathered. That helps inform the core team. The core team is made up of district leadership team members, the folks that you're hearing from at these meetings, our architectural team. Those are conversations. We take all those data points, and then the core team makes recommendations to the Board of Education. Those recommendations to the Board of Education will happen down the road based off of this timeline. You can see phase 3, where those types of conversations happen. So this helps drive where that information lands. So we really appreciate folks being in the space. I want to end, before I hand it to Kyle Smith, the following. So if you've been to the other meetings, hopefully you've heard us talk about, we are today talking about exciting information, a lot of information about our facilities. But what we want to make sure you hear loud and clear, and I want to make sure that I provide clarity every time I speak in front of our community. It is critical that although we talk about the bricks and mortar, that we keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is the incredible work that happens within our classrooms, that's happening in our buildings, the love and the care and the compassion that we show to our students. That has to continue to be the main thing. But in order to make sure that our students receive a world-class education and experience with incredible opportunities because of the incredible people in this space, we have to also take a look at our facilities and how our facilities support the love and care of our students and our staff. So that's really important that we don't ever want to lose sight of the main thing as we go through these conversations. And another really important aspect is our budget and the financial aspect of this process. So we talked about when you go and you're looking to purchase a home, you start having broad conversations around your budget. So Kyle Smith, our treasurer, is going to share a little bit of information about the space. I'm like, where did Kyle Smith go? Let's give it up for Kyle Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Fine. So we've been getting a few questions about budget. What are we talking about? And I love when people start talking about budget. I don't get those conversations a lot from our community, so thank you. So this page right here, all these numbers you're seeing are in today's dollars. Trying to do an apples to apples comparison. But first, when you pay for facilities, you usually do that through a bond issue or a vote for taxes to pay for that. That has nothing to do what we've been talking about as a district for this upcoming fall, and that is for operating, day-to-day expenditures, staff's salaries and benefits. But bonds, what would pay for what we're talking about, is further out into the future. But the state of Ohio has a calculation that we run through, and you get a debt limit or a debt capacity, not much different than purchasing your own home. For Bexley, in today's dollars, that would be $180 million. That would be an estimated 11 mills. We're not saying that that's where we will end up, because we still have a lot of work to do. It could be less than this. We don't know where we're going to end up, but that kind of gives us the threshold or the parameter when we're talking about projects and work. In talking about estimates of repairing our facilities in today's dollars, we've talked about this in previous meetings. All the repairs for all 5 buildings that would be needed in today's dollars, $101 million there. Again, to give us context, if we were to replace all 5 buildings, that cost is a range of $235 million to $304. And it's a range because there's different scopes of project, different sizes. And we've used 5 Central Ohio projects going on right now. And again, different sizes for those school districts, different types of remodeling. So there's a little bit of a range in the cost there. So again, today's dollars, not saying that we will or we expect to have $180 million at this point worth of expenditures. And this is all going to change a year from now, 15, 16 months from now. Inflation changes, construction market changes, interest rates will probably change, which affects the millage that could be on the ballot or ask. This is another chart we've shown over the last couple months, estimating the phasing in or the needs of our facility expenditures, and this is based on the facility assessment from Moody Nolan, and that 101 becomes 146 when you kind of phase that out and look at the lifespan of the mechanical systems and needs. So not everything of that 101 million would really need to happen right now. You can see that the buckets are spread out over 0 to 15 years, but 146 escalated for future inflationary pressures. We've had questions on enrollment. It's probably no secret that enrollment's grown in Bexley over the last 15 years. 5 years ago, when we did an enrollment study through the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, which we kind of started this process about 2019, but had to press pause because of COVID for obvious reasons there. So now we've restarted that, got another estimate on enrollment. And this is a free estimate from the Facilities Construction Commission. But 5 years ago, in 2019, or 18, so more than 5 years ago, 2018, we were projected to have increased enrollment. Things have changed. How they measure or project enrollment is relatively the same, but the inputs has changed. So the takeaway on this year's updated enrollment projection is enrollment's flat for Bexley. And this is Future Think does this for many school districts across the state. They have the expertise in this. And just recently, we are looking at kindergarten registration, and that kind of is telling us that enrollment is plateauing for us. It's actually a little bit lower than what we've seen recently. So if you know of someone that has a kindergartner ready to go next year and they haven't registered, please get them in there. That'll help us with staffing for next year. But we are seeing that already a little bit with one little metric of enrollment kind of flattening out for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Steve to take it on from here.
Great. Okay, thank you, Kyle. Good morning. All right, we're going to launch into the sort of the design portion of the presentation. I'm going to do a few preamble slides just to sort of set the stage, and then my colleague Amy Ekman is going to walk you through the various options that we've developed so far on all the campuses. Wanted to start with this slide. We showed this at our first community engagement session, and thought today would be a good point to sort of remind everybody what we're up to. And the district facilities plan really wants to bring together those assessments that Kyle was just talking about. He was speaking about the physical adequacy assessment. The number that you just saw there, the $146 million, is just to repair what's kind of, needs to be repaired today. It's not making any changes to the buildings for, to make spaces bigger or more flexible, okay? That's the first piece on the left. The second piece that we've done is what we call an educational adequacy assessment, and those reports are on the district's website. I'll show you the covers of those in just a second. That now is looking at sort of more qualitative aspects of the buildings. Our space is big enough, sort of across the board, your classrooms are smaller than would be sort of standard for today. Looks at flexibility, looks at relationships between spaces, looks at daylighting came up a number of times, as we're going to talk about quite a few more times this morning. And the last piece is a financial assessment, which is, it's coming, right? It's out there in the future. As we develop the options have obvious financial implications, right? If it's a more intense project, the price of it's going to go higher. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in Amy's section of the presentation this morning. When we bring those all together, what we're really trying to do is create a strategic look ahead. So that the districts, the capital dollars that get spent in the next near term are wise investments, so that you don't do a project a year from now and look at it back 5 years from now and say, we actually got those in the wrong order. We should have done this project first, because now we need to undo a few things that we just spent some money on. So to set the stage for wise strategic investments. So that's really part and parcel of what the planning engagement is about. One thing it's not necessarily about, however, is we're not designing sort of full architectural design on all the projects, right? We're trying to set the planning in place to allow that designing to happen after a successful bond passage, right? So there's a lot of work out in the future that will fine-tune, refine, draw elevations, full-on renderings, all that stuff, right? It's not to say that we can't provide some ideas about what things might begin to look like from a, let's say, even a building massing standpoint, sort of the volumetrics on the building. But the full-on design happens later, so we just want to make sure folks understand that. Okay, the reports I just talked about, you can find these on the district's website, both the physical adequacy and the educational adequacy reports. They're up on the website for you. As Amy walks you through the options, you're going to see all of the planning is color-coded, okay? Let me explain what you're going to be looking at. The yellow is looking at, these are areas of the building where really it's functioning pretty well, and we're going to implement all the repairs get implemented across the board, whether it is being renovated or just repaired, right? And now something's being built new in blue, right? It's obviously new construction, so there's no repair associated with it. So yellow is repairing, green is just renovating, so that might be a space that needs to be larger. That is, it's in the wrong place of the building and it needs to be relocated someplace else on campus, okay? So there's something else happening there other than repairing it. And then rebuilding is, you're going to see on some of the diagrams, areas of a part of a building that might be going away and being built new, okay? So be watching for the colors. There'll be a legend across the bottom of all of the slides that will remind you they're on the boards. If you haven't figured out yet that what's on the boards is actually what Amy's going to show you, so it's kind of like HGTV. You're going to get the reveal here or later, okay? Although you're going to see it on the screen first. Just want to keep your focus up here. Another thing that we did was, you'll see on the right side, this is basically a counting of all the space in the current facilities. So what's on the right side of this in red, the big red label is existing space. So every single space in the buildings has been accounted for, its size, and grouped by category. And then what we did as a companion to that was we worked with building leadership in all the buildings. We said, okay, what's working for you, what's not working for you? And then also looking at the guiding principles. So what you're seeing up on the screen is right sizing of classrooms, adding in things like collaboration spaces and small group spaces that just don't exist in the schools today. So all of the diagrams that you're going to see take into account what we're calling the model programs. Now, some spaces work just fine, okay? Like you will find the high school theater, for instance, is not changing in any of the diagrams, okay? Because it works just fine for the school. But the model program is taking into account those programmatic space changes that we think really need to be looked at, okay? So that's part of the program that's happened so far. And then with this, Dr. Williams is going to share a little bit about some district-wide options that were discussed during the process here.
Thank you. Thank you. And before we begin, I do want to announce that we are recording this, and so will be posted online on our website here soon. But my message for the next 2 minutes is to explain to you, we began this process. A lot of people had ideas about configuration of school. Well, if we're doing facilities design, should we also be looking at how our schools are configured? Should that be a part of the process? And we met, our facilities advisory committee met, and we decided, yes, we should take everyone's ideas, run them through some type of process, and then as the slide that Dr. Fine showed earlier, I call it the chain of command slide. There was an inform, recommend, and a decide slide. I'm a member of the core team also. There's four or five of us. We meet twice a week, and we try to prepare for these meetings. We look at research, we look at feedback and data, and we have to make some recommendations and sometimes some decisions. So there were 6 main options that were brought up in the community for us to consider as far as reconfiguration of our district. The first 6 went through a building teams conversation, and we got feedback from our building team members about which of these we feel have traction, which do not. And like I said, we sat down and after the first round, we reviewed the feedback, and out of those 6 options, we decided to move take option 3 out of for traction because of some research that we read about the importance of students being in a grade level, especially in the elementary level, for having a continued contact with that school and issue. And we also felt number 2 also kind of covered the same ideas as option 3 in a sense. It's about going to 2 schools. Obviously, option 3 could be 3 grade levels. You could have a grade level at each school and keep 3 schools. Option 2 was avoiding the going to 2 elementary schools, kind of abandoning the neighborhood schools idea. And so after our conversation, we decided that we were going to only move forward options 1, options 2. We combined options 4 and 5 because we thought they were similar. And then the option 6, we moved on to the next round for consideration. And then after we took a poll of all we had like 55 people on the building teams, and they gave us feedback on each one of those. Option 1 came across very strong in our community. It also came across very strong in our values conversations we had early on, that neighborhood schools were very important to this community. Very high number of people responded in our surveys to advance that. We did not receive that kind of what I call supermajority. In option 2 about going to 2 elementary schools. So our core team decided to take that option and not advance that one. Options 4 and 5, when they were combined, talking about finding athletic spaces or other green spaces that we could lease through partnerships, that we could purchase. That came across very high too, as far as to advance that idea. And so that one is shaded blue because we have advanced that. And the last option, option 6, about returning 6th grade back to the middle school to help, from the middle school back to the elementary schools to relieve some of the congestion at Casson Complex. That did not receive that supermajority we were looking for as well to advance that. So the only 2 configurations we're looking at right now, and it's not that we're looking at it. I think it's important that they have an idea of what they're designing for during this process, so they're not spinning their wheels and trying to make the progress during the time that we have their services. So They are built, what you'll see today will be based on these assumptions. The assumption that we will have neighborhood schools continue on the same sites that we do have. We are always looking, our strategic plan gave us the direction to look for properties, look for partnerships. We are in conversation with Capital, we're in conversation with the Columbus Parks and Rec, we're in conversation with the JCC. We're doing whatever we can to find space in and around our area for athletics and possibly for district administration and things like that, that we could move, if we move out, that frees up more space for parking and less congestion around there as well. So this is where we are at this time, and now I'll turn it back over to Steve.
Okay, just one thing we wanted to share with you is Amy's going to run you through some feedback and things that we've gotten for all the options. All the options address the issues that are up on the screen. So she's not going to necessarily touch on these because they are in common for all of them. She's going to highlight some things that maybe are atypical in each one. So let me go through these. All the options address right-sizing the classrooms. Okay, we talked about that just a moment ago. Support spaces, specialty spaces, arts and athletics. If they're undersized, like the middle school gym, you're going to see some options where the middle school gym gets larger, right, to fit the middle school population. Create collaboration spaces and teacher workspaces. Daylight has come up a number of times. As the buildings have grown over time, layers, especially the Cassingham complex, layers have been added on that have clogged up windows that were once there and brought daylight into the building. Accessibility across the board, ADA accessibility, universal design, those are things that are top of mind for us as we're thinking about the options. Adjacencies and circulation issues, so spaces that really want to be together, like, you know, in some cases there are administrative spaces that are scattered around the building because that's the only place they could go, bringing them back together, so to be co-located. And circulation issues. Some buildings suffer more with circulation issues than others. The obvious example of that is the Cassingham complex. As it's grown over time, you know, if you're unfamiliar with that building and you walk into it the first time and you're trying to find your way around, you probably could get lost, maybe. I'm guessing. Restrooms, students, when we talked to the students, this was really top of mind for them. Can you please just fix the toilets in the bathrooms? Like that was a big one for them. And then as we're able to, you know, looking at site amenities, whether it's playfields, parking, traffic, that type of thing, your sites are smaller, and they are, as we've talked about in our, you know, in a previous session, by nature of being smaller, they're a bit more constricted. And so there's certain limitations. We will continue to look as we start really get through past this round of input, as we start looking at at improving the options as we go forward. We're going to be looking at all of this. So stay tuned for more on that. You know, in the blue rectangle there, as Dr. Williams just mentioned, we're really the options that you're going to see today come with, you know, sort of one common thing about them is they're assuming that the schools are staying on the sites where they are in the grade level configuration that they're in right now. Okay, so that's sort of a working assumption. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. We have a lot of options to go through. We're going to walk through Maryland, Montrose, and the Cassingham complex, and each have multiple options to share. We're going to spend a little time on the first slide, kind of setting up the parameters of what you're going to see, the first couple slides, that will repeat over the information that you'll see. One thing to note is Kyle bookended the repair and the full replacement. None of these show full replacements. We heard loud and clear that there were some attachments to some of the buildings on your campuses. It doesn't mean we're not going to explore that in the future. The building teams asked us to explore that in some cases, right? But the first pass was we have some sentimental attachments to many of our buildings, and these are the pieces we want to hang on to. You're going to see different levels of that. There's some that hold on to more, and there's some that hold on to less. So just a preamble there for some of the options, okay? I'm also at the end of each of these going to share what the building team feedback was. So the building team feedback informs our next steps, as Dr. Fine was saying. So these are not going to be the final options, right? Your feedback and the building team feedback will inform how these will change for the next time we see you, okay? So Maryland, we're going to start each of these with the list of educational adequacy items. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that are different than what Steve went over. So again, all of these are going to address the right-sized classrooms, collaboration spaces, et cetera. But at Maryland, some of the things we want to address that weren't on that list specific to Maryland were some of the special ed spaces are in the lower level, which is not inclusive and equitable for many of those children. So that will move up in all of the options to the main level. Also, many offices are not contiguous, and they're not at the front door, co-located with a secure vestibule, so that will be addressed in all of the Maryland options, and a larger kitchen serving area will be addressed as well. You're not gonna see multiple floor levels for many of these. We're kind of gonna go over the first floor, conceptually what's gonna happen for the buildings. And that's just for time, right? We've vetted all of these to scale, so these are scaled, and we know this will fit. But just for time, we're gonna talk higher level, okay? We're gonna start with existing, just to show you. All of these will be on the boards for reference, and if you have questions, if we miss anything, we'll also be, as a reminder, waiting afterwards at the boards to share with you. So we started each of these with a demolition. What's gonna go away to make room for more or better? In this case at Maryland, it is the west wing of 3 classrooms. They're very narrow, quite small, and we can fit twice as many classrooms if we reconfigure without working within that space itself. We can't do it unless we take it down and reconfigure it. So the first option just takes that piece away. And these are what the diagrams are gonna look like. The yellow, again, is repair. So we're gonna fix lighting and mechanical in the corridors. The library and gym are newer, so they're not gonna get wholesale renovations, but they'll get things repaired that need repaired, but they're in quite good shape at Maryland. And then the offices and classrooms will be reconfigured to include common spaces, and also right-sizing those classrooms means we need to do an addition. And that's the blue piece, where we took that part of the building down, and also along the back of the gym. And what that does is it connects a kind of circular corridor throughout Maryland. Right now it's a U shape, and so the circulation is a little bit challenging to get from one side to the other. Now all of the classrooms will be connected around the gym and have ease of circulation for some of those corridors and spaces that were a little tighter before. That includes a larger gym lobby for events at Maryland, where it's, again, quite tight in the current gym lobby. And again, that admin and offices are gonna be at the front connected to a secure vestibule. Okay. So just a little history before we hit option B for Maryland. The picture on the left is the original Maryland school. You'll see the classroom wings that are pointed out in the plan, and then with the arrows, had these lovely bay windows, and they were kind of a sawtooth shape. And those rooms now have been filled in, and so there's some very narrow rooms, and those corner windows no longer exist. They're really just a window at the end of each of those classrooms. So this option looks at the potential of what if we brought some of that original architecture back, where we provide more daylight into some of those longer, narrower classrooms. So the difference here, again, is just a little demolition of selective demolition to get some of those corners back where we can add more daylight into spaces. Oh. So that means we'll just do a little bit more of an addition. It doesn't mean we're taking space away and not putting it back, right? We're gonna put it back. Those are gonna be related to commons areas. We're not gonna make classrooms smaller. So what that looks like is bringing those sawtooth classrooms back with the bay windows and adding a little bit more space, support space, to the upstairs. We will also be making improvements to the lower level. It does not mean that will not get improved. We're just not showing it on a diagram today. Okay. The other thing I neglected to point out is the dollar signs next to the options. While we don't have dollar amounts, we're putting $1, $2, or $3 signs next to the options as kind of an order of magnitude as we go along. So the first dollar sign is getting all of those educational adequacy and repair items taken care of for what we believe is the least amount of cost for those items. And the $2 signs is taking it a little bit further, that when you see $3 signs on the next options, it's taking it a little bit further, okay? So just a preamble there. This is what that looks like compared. Not a ton of difference. And now we're going to go over the building team comments and what we're going to look for the next time, what we're going to explore. There's going to be a lot more options coming out of Maryland. All of the stuff at the top is what the building team liked. So they liked all the improvements to the things that we talked about, which make perfect sense. Larger classrooms, common spaces. They liked how practical option A was, very functional, without taking building pieces away. What we're going to talk a little bit more about is what they wanted us to explore. Do you want to turn it off? While Steve does that. The building team wanted us to explore what it might look like to add along the front of Maryland versus where we had shown the addition. They wanted us to look at how the new classrooms might interface with the playgrounds because of it might be distracting if the playground were too close. They wanted us to explore more daylight into the lower level spaces, improve space for band and strings, and or make the stage more flexible, more parking improvements, zoning the building after hours for community use to make it easy for people to get in and out of the gym and the cafeteria. Spreading out the support spaces, the office spaces, so they're not all on one side of the building. And also, adding space for the sawtooth version, instead of taking space away, perhaps pushing out those sawtooth elements so that we're not removing existing space. So that was another idea. So these are all things you'll see that we'll be exploring with the building teams, and you'll see that in Community Engagement Session 5. Okay, so we're on to Montrose. Montrose educational adequacy needs. Again, these are all the things Steve talked about, included in all the district options. But specifically at Montrose, the classrooms are in a triangular configuration, which is not an ideal configuration and not really the most efficient way to use the space. So we're looking at that. We're going to fix that in both the Montrose options. The cafeteria is also undersized at Montrose, so we're going to fix that in both of the options. And they don't have a performance space. They don't have a stage space at Montrose, whereas Cassingham has a theater and Maryland has a stage adjacent to their cafeteria. That does not exist at Montrose. So we're going to put in a presentation space or a performance space. A little history, again, on the Montrose building and how it was added onto, because that's important to our conversation. You'll see the original building on the left there, and then you'll see the new on the right. Ghosted in is the addition, just so you can understand where that happened. And it blocked up some windows, and it also, Steve, if you could point out the stairs in the existing building. It enclosed the stairs so they're internal to the building. What were along an outside wall were now internal to the building. It's part of the reason the classrooms are triangular is because of access into the classrooms, and that stair is blocking up the access. So just some understanding. Another thing is the addition doesn't have a ton of windows. The original building had a lot of windows. The addition does not. So we're going to try to reconfigure those classrooms so they get more natural light. And by making them rectangular, we can do that. So again, the existing building, first floor. And the first option, the demolition, is isolated to the right side of the gym, the east side of the gym. There's a mechanical mezzanine now there that's a little bit non-functional. And we will plan to add on to that a stage / multi-purpose room and bring the music room to an outside wall for natural light. It currently does not have natural light. And add some classroom space in that blue addition that will allow for kindergarten classrooms to be grouped together in larger size. The cafeteria will go where the music room was and be adjacent to the gym as a nice pre-function space, and it'll be right-sized with the kitchen serving nearby. Important to both options is acknowledging that Remington is really the main entrance for most people on the Montrose campus, and we are placing the administrative offices near that entrance on the lowest level. In both options, it is in that spot. The stairs remain here, and we're renovating again some of the classroom and sports spaces, and they're all going to be rectangular. This is indicative, and just for Montrose in particular, just to understand how the classrooms are arranged, we did a second floor. There are 3 floors to Montrose. The 3rd floor will be similar. The common spaces will kind of flank around those existing stairs, and the classrooms will be located in groups of 3, so 3 sections with support spaces nearby. There is the main stair off of Main Street will remain in this option, and there'll be still a lobby space, but not necessarily a main entry because we're not putting administrative functions there anymore. They're on the lower level. And that describes this option. The second option is a little more invasive on the renovation side or the rebuild side, because we are suggesting that the stairs where they are currently could be relocated to make circulation and accessibility into classrooms and common spaces more desirable as an end result. We are also suggesting an option where the Main Street stair gets doesn't go away, but is rebuilt so that it can provide split level access to both the lower level and the 2nd floor. So it still acknowledges its original grandeur, but also gives an accessible entry off of Main Street to those office spaces. So that's why you're seeing the demolition where you are seeing it on this option. And what that looks like, everything else, all the pieces are very, very similar here. The blue pieces additionally are a lobby entry and stairs pulled off along the side of the building to allow for the corridor to cut across the entirety of the classrooms on all 3 floors. So that you don't have to work around those existing stairs. They currently are very tight, and they're the main way kids get up and down. So this would make improvements to those stairs and the circulation overall. It is not just to move the stairs out, it's really just improving circulation in the building in general. So a little bit more renovation in this option and a little bit more rebuilding. Actually, where the stairs were should probably be blue because they're going away. But it's, again, reconfiguring. You can see here also that idea of the split level stair entry off of Main Street. It would still have 2 kind of side stairs going on either side up to the mid-level, but you would walk in through a secure vestibule through the Main Street side at grade level. So you have 2 entries into the administrative suites, possibly. So acknowledging, again, the historical main entry as well. That's really the big difference with this option. A little bit more expensive, again, because you're doing a little bit more work. That's what they look like side by side. And then we'll go over what the building team liked. They, of course, liked all the improvements to their deficiencies. So that's a given. They did want us to put the split stair and that access to both options or any options that we do. They really like the idea of having that administration on the lowest level with accessibility from Remington and Main Street. So that we'll explore in all options moving forward. They wanted the new addition that's currently just 1 story to be structured for addition on top in case of any need for that. And they wanted to look at reconfiguring for more parking. If we are reconfiguring the parking for the addition, they want to make sure that we're addressing some of the parking needs. So that was the main things we'll be looking at as we move forward in the options for Montrose. Okay, lastly, we're going to look at Cassingham. We're going to look at a couple slides here. One is the educational adequacy for the elementary school. There's some repeat here for the middle high school. Some of the things specific to Cassingham, in addition to all of the items that Steve mentioned, were the building entry. This came up multiple times, that there's one main entry, but it's not necessarily close to the elementary school, so people have to make a long journey to get into the elementary school, and they have to go through the cafeteria to do that. So we're gonna look at those and all the options. The cafeteria is far for elementary school students. It's also shared with the middle high school and very, very crowded. So all of the options for the elementary school will have a dedicated elementary school cafeteria. And the media center is small and shared really with the middle school, so all of the options will have a new elementary school media center that is, or library that is separate from the middle school library. Okay. At the middle high school, we're gonna look at how athletic fields are configured. I'm not gonna say we're solving it. It is a very tight site, as you know, but you'll see some ideas around athletic fields. You'll see additional space for athletics, meaning possible reconfiguring of the middle school gym or a new middle school gym, additional trainers room space, a larger weight room, additional locker room space. That's all needed space. You'll see, again, a cafeteria that's no longer shared with the elementary school, and a middle school library dedicated, not shared with the elementary school. One of the things that's really unique to this campus, and many school campuses across the country actually, is additions. And Cassingham has been added onto, we did a little bit more digging on the chronology of the campus, and that while this is hard to read, it will be on the boards for you to look at, just so we could understand how might we disassemble pieces and parts, and where might that dividing line be when we start to look at how we would add on to the building. Where might it make sense to take pieces away? And so that's usually along the lines of where it was added to originally. Originally, the high school building, Steve's gonna point it out, was a courtyard building. There was natural light into a lot of those buried spaces in the middle, and it was filled in 1982, maybe 92, with a courtyard and the science rooms above, and that's why a lot of that space is no longer has access to daylight. The original gym was actually demolished to make way for the larger gym that's there today in 1960. Also important to this conversation is between the last time we talked to you, we had a structural study done. Many of you asked, can we add on vertically to the existing building? Can we build higher with what's there now? And the simple answer to that is not without great cost and great disruption. And the only place that it's possible structurally is the 1953 middle school addition. But again, that would be it may not be, the juice may not be worth the squeeze for that, right? Just to put it that way. It would be invasive, and it's maybe not the best building anyway. So that was why we wanted to share this chronology. Existing floor plan for reference. Okay, so you'll see a very large stadium that has dashed lines around it in this, and the tennis as well. This is something that we took as an assumption, right or wrong, for all of these options. Probably wrong, right? We heard from the building teams that this is not necessarily something we want to see in all the options. We want to see what it looks like if you keep the stadium and you keep the tennis courts. So just a preamble, you're going to see this stadium move in all of the options today, but we will be looking in the future at other ways to handle the stadium and tennis. So I just wanted to put it out there. That was something we did as an assumption. Again, right or wrong. Demolition for this, we're taking out a portion of the middle school, and we're taking out a portion of the high school. Where there were original courtyards, we're gonna recreate courtyards to allow for daylight into spaces that are buried currently. So what that looks like, and you're gonna see progressively more blue on all of these options. So this is the $1 sign option, the least invasive, although still invasive option. The middle school classrooms will be located adjacent to a courtyard. There will be an entry that elementary and middle school share adjacent to their office spaces. High school will get its own entry centered on where the original entry actually was, where it says Bexley High School. If you look at the building now where the classrooms are, there was an entry there at one time. So it's restoring that. And each entry is in alignment with this courtyard. So as you walk in, you would see this courtyard, and classrooms or support space all wrap around that courtyard. The high school addition is 3 stories. The elementary school addition is 2 stories. The middle school addition is 3 stories. And those would all be structured for future floors if needed as we move forward. We are expanding the stage. We are taking classrooms that are buried at Cassingham Elementary and creating those common spaces, and needing new classrooms at Cassingham to be able to do that and meet their needs and meet the daylight that's required. Again, new cafeteria, new library. We are renovating 1 floor of the art and music wing to become middle school classrooms so that we're able to keep the middle school all in the central portion of the building. Okay. Option B, we are gonna do more demolition. Cassingham currently is 2 stories with a small 3rd floor. The high school currently is 3 stories with, again, kind of a smaller 3rd floor, and the middle school is 2 stories. So this option would allow us to connect 3 stories across all the buildings and take those 2 kind of smaller 3rd floors and make it a more contiguous space. So that's really the reason to take more of the building out in option B. And what that looks like, it creates, again, the same courtyards. We're moving a few of the pieces around inside, but essentially the same courtyards. High school still has a separate entry, although in a different spot, from the elementary and middle school. And that's going to be a 3-story addition, again, across the front of the building. Same as before. In this option, the elementary school gym will get taken down and enlarged into a new full court gym so that it can be used by athletics after hours. Option C. So you getting the idea, we're tearing more down. Okay, so now we're down to the original Cassingham building and the original high school building plus that 1960 gym. And that's really what we're keeping as far as building stock. And what does it look like when we do that? What opportunities arise when we do that? Option C basically takes the center portion of the building, you see a lot more blue here, and builds a 3-story contiguous, connected, where circulation is very clear and connected throughout the building. And all of those programmatic elements are handled. The reason the elementary school gym in this option does not get larger is because it would be a new right-sized middle school gym in this option. Again, all the pieces and parts are there, but because we're stacking up 3 stories and we have this option to do that, we are freeing up actually a little bit of site space for whatever purpose it needs to be. I neglected an important part of all of these. As we noted, the tennis courts or softball can fit on the site with the track and field and the stadium. So the tennis courts or softball would have to move off the site in really any of these options. And I apologize for missing that important piece. Option C will cost more, and the phasing will be more challenging because you're tearing down a building and building on top of where it exists today. That would mean likely portables or another home for people while the first phase is built. And we'll do more on phasing as we move forward for these options and describe that in further detail when we hone in on which options we're gonna land on. But ultimately, the end product is a really nice, contiguous elementary, middle, high school building. And finally, option D is the same demolition. And it looks at a new build. So the middle school, in this case, is a new building built where the softball field is now. And it is connected, it could be connected physically to the elementary school or not, depending on the desire. But it is free and clear built, which makes phasing a lot easier because you can put the kids in that center portion that you're tearing down in that building once it's built, and it's less disruptive, possibly less time. Similar pieces and parts, really, to the elementary school. Not much changes there. And the high school really just completes around this central entry, completes all the pieces and parts, creating an outdoor area between the buildings, kind of a quad or a campus feel. This one, however, because you're taking footprint for the new middle school, you cannot fit softball or tennis on the site. So you're left with the stadium and this lovely green space, but it's a decision as to whether that is important or not. So here are the options currently, and I'm going to share with you now what the building teams said about them, which may reflect what you all are thinking as well. So these are divided into the elementary school building team and the middle high school building team. It's a little hard to see, but these are all on the boards as well. The highlighted in blue are what was common between the middle school and high school building team, as well as the Cassingham building team. Many of the building team members, they like all of those improvements. Specific to option A, they thought it was cost effective, but maybe not the best long-term solution. They like how option C, end result, fixes the challenge and maintains kind of what you know as the contiguous building. And option D, how it provides separate identity and potentially alleviates traffic by splitting up the entries to the building. Option D, they like the outdoor space, but it does limit athletic space. So this is all things that you probably are aware of. They want us to explore an option where the stadium and tennis do not move, and we're going to do that. They want us to explore how to enhance elementary play areas in option A and B. If you know the campus, there is an affectionately named prison yard space that is around the corner in between the triangle or the angled building. And that is still there in options A and B, and so we would have to make improvements to that. Option D, they want to explore if the elementary and middle school, so that new piece, could actually be the elementary school, so the high school and middle school are more adjacent to each other. And that was common. There's also an option where we start with a clean slate new building. That was a suggestion. And explore where the athletic components will go. As Harley mentioned, that's in progress if they are not on campus. Some people wanted us to look if they will fit on Maryland and Montrose, and we're going to do that as well. Middle and high school comments, again, very much in common with the same things that Cassingham said. They also, this is, again, if tennis and softball can remain on the campuses was the ad. So lots of things we're going to be looking at as we move on to building teams 4 and 5 and the next community engagement session. Again, you'll see variations on these options. And of course, we're looking for your ideas today. I'm sure there's more out there. Dr. Williams.
Thank you. My job is to kind of wrap this up and get you to move around so where you can see the boards, get a closer look at some of that. So I just wanted to just end by at least our presentation part by saying that remember that this process was initiated in our strategic plan, and we're moving along, and it's been a kind of exciting time. But this whole process is about collective wisdom. It's about getting feedback and community values. And so that feedback, this process, as Dr. Fine said earlier, those options you're looking at today, I guarantee you will look so much differently by the end of this process based on the feedback. They've already mentioned that the feedback they heard pretty loud and clear is that, is there any way we can do this without moving the athletic field and the tennis courts? They're going back and they're going to look at that. So in July, our building teams will have an idea if that's even viable. They're looking at that to see what's viable and what's not viable right now. But that's a process in action, how it works. And so your feedback will be collected here in a little bit through a survey. And I encourage everyone to provide that kind of feedback on that survey so that we can take a look at it and make sure it gets in the right hands, and so they can make those, take some of those recommendations, see which one of those have tractions and so on. So we have about a half hour left, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who'll talk us through what's going to happen.
And as always, you can always hit this link, the URL that's on the website. There's a form there that you can always leave feedback anytime you want to, okay? But for today, for this morning, we are going to shortly ask you to get out of your chairs. We've got the same diagrams on the boards around the room. So the Casicam complex is over here. Maryland and Montrose is on this side of the room. If you will take if you can use your smartphones to capture that URL that's up there, that will take you to a survey that asks these questions. What do you like or dislike about the options? What are your thoughts about how to make them better? Are there ones that you feel like should advance, or in saying that same thing, things that should be left behind, and just really an open space there for you to share anything else that you want to share. Now, if for whatever reason time does not permit you to do this morning, I would encourage you to try to do it this morning while you're here with us. With each of the questions or the options, when you get to those, there's a link that you can hit that will take you to the plan graphics to help remind you of what each one of those is about, okay? So that is there for your use if you need it, if you just don't have time to do it this morning. All right, so at this point, we're going to close the formal presentation. We are here to help answer questions that you might have as you look at the options, or just general questions, even if it's not about a specific option. We're here for the next half hour or so. We can stay longer if we need to, okay? So with that, I want to close the formal presentation and say a big thank you for showing up this morning. As Dr. Fine always likes to say, your time is one of the most valuable things that you have, if not one of the most valuable things you have. You've given it up this morning to be here with us, and we really want to thank you for your attention and participation today.